Alrighty, folks, one of the things I love to do is when my guest turns the table. In this example, Dustin has prepared some questions about real estate investing, DSCR loans, the economy, stocks, whatever it is. He wants to ask me some questions. So, Dustin, let's get started. What's going on?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. I look forward to this. These are fun. And, folks, I do not know these questions. I never want to know the questions ahead of time. So let's see where this goes.
Sweet. All right, we're going to start with some easy ones that I wrote up. So in your opinion, if you're the underwriter or the lender, right, you got option A and option B.
Okay.
Option A, you've got a client with a 780 FICO, looking at an 80% LTV purchase.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
DSCR is at 1.05, just above 1. Okay.
Yep.
Option B, 700 FICO, 65% loan to value.
Yep.
Same DSCR 1.05.
Okay.
Which borrower, option A or option B, gets the better rate?
Gets the better rate? B.
Yeah. B. That was
B.
easy. Good job. Look, I think it's part of the questions I was asking was to show that leverage in this scenario goes a lot further than credit score. Right? Was that 15% difference? So the exact, if the audience wants to see, you're basically looking at an interest rate for option A, okay, at 6.5 on a 30-year fix.
Okay.
Option B, you're looking at a 6.1. So pretty substantial difference there.
Yeah.
Question 2. Who is more risky to the lender? Option A owns 50 rentals with a 680 FICO. Owns 1 rental with a 760 FICO.
Who's more risky?
Yeah.
Oh, B.
For a DSCR loan.
B.
B. Easy. Good job, Mike.
Yeah.
This one is then showing that experience is also more important, you know, in the lender's or the underwriter's eyes, especially on a DSCR loan. This is not a conventional loan, because conventional, little twist, option B would be better for a conventional.
Oh, no, conventional for sure, yeah. The other thing that you have to assume with the 50 example, and I assume this, was they've owned them for a long time, right? It's not like they just went out and bought 50 yesterday. That might be a different story. But I assumed they've owned them for a long time. Yeah, option B is far more risky to a DSCR lender. Yep.
Perfect. You're 2 for 2.
I like this so far.
All right, this one I can't say hasn't a definitive right answer, but okay, you've got $1 million in cash that you're going to deploy into buying real estate.
Okay.
What would you tell, your client is the better strategy? Buying 4 properties at 75% LTV, or buying 8 properties at 50% LTV?
I actually think that's the wrong question. I think if you're looking to deploy net new capital in this example of $1 million, it's not about LTV and it's not about unit count, right? I think those are numbers that the internet gets, wrong. I think the internet in this example would, of course, I want 8 properties at 50%. What are you talking about? Well, what if those 8 properties are, D-class neighborhood and your numbers are freaking wrong, right? Out of state. I mean, that's, the option is C. Get a buy box, figure out your cash, your cash on cash return, do great deals. The one thing I would tell you in today's market, just to kind of answer it more explicitly, I want to know how deep you're buying it. Your money is made when you buy. So if you've done the work for 90 days or 100 days, and for whatever reason, the value of the property is 400, but you found a motivated seller who painted their house lime green, and nobody wants it, and you can buy it for $320 and paint it for $7,000. That's what tell me about the deal. So it's not unit count and it's not even LTV. I'm gonna pass on that because I think the question's wrong.
That was a trick question I thought I would get you at, and see the right answer, because look, I'm not saying I'm right, but this is what I always tell clients when they ask that question too, and they want to just either deploy their 1031, exchange money or whatnot. But the answer that I believe is correct is that it's based on what's the cash flow your
Yes.
return day one that you're getting by deploying that 1 million. I'd rather, for example, a client buy one property where their cash flow or their DSCR is at 1.8 versus buy 20 properties where their cash flow is at 1.01. So that
Yeah.
was the quote unquote trick that I thought I might get you, but that was foolish for me to think that I could get you there.
Slide one by me.
Yeah. Um, this one takes a little bit of math to do, but
Okay.
which loan is cheaper? Okay.
Okay.
Option A, and I'm assuming a 500K loan, but it'll work on any loan amount, but I ran the numbers on a 500K loan. Okay.
Okay. Mhm.
7.25% with a 54321 prepay,
Yep.
or a 7.875% with no prepay.
Now, when you say cheaper, you mean for the borrower, the cost to do the loan? What are we talking about?
For the borrower to hold it, because this is a conundrum that I'm discussing with clients all the time about, do I go with a no prepay so I can refinance in a year when rates are lower, or 3 years? Where's that break even? How long does ultimately A or B have to hold the loan until one is more profitable than the other?
Yeah, I'm just trying to do the math in my head, which is pretty. My guess in this example is you would probably have to hold that loan greater than 2 years
Yeah.
to make that profitable exchange. So
I had a calculator before this. Okay.
okay.
I won't test my calculator skills versus your mental handwriting skills on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the exact answer on a 500K loan is over the first 3 years,
Ah.
7.875 is going to pay 11,000 more in interest.
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
technically, after 3 years, if you look at option A, the prepayment penalty is a 2% penalty, right?
Yep.
So that's 10K,
Yeah.
right? 2%. So that's the break even. So on a 0.6 differential, that's normally what you'll see
Sure.
between no prepay and 5 years of prepay. So when you're considering that and you're asking your lender or broker or whatever, right? Hey, let me see an option with no prepay versus the best rate with 5 years. You got to decide, okay, the break even really between these two options is, will I hold this for 3 years?
Right.
That's the, math behind it.
Yeah, and again, in this environment, with my community, again, you have to make your own bets. Some of this is gambling, right? Do you think rates will be lower or what? I mean, there's some form of gambling. But what I would ask you to do is always set it, forget it. Write the deal that makes sense today, have that 5 to 10 year hold period, and get on with your next thing. You could tie yourselves in all kinds of knots. Again, for me, in this example, I would just take option A. I want the lower rate today. I'm not going to gamble a penny on the future. If I get lucky, so be it. But I want the lowest rate because I'm going to set it and forget this and worry about the next deal, not the last deal.
I love
That's
it.
kind of how I look at that.
I like that. Now, rather than guessing on the future or gambling on the future, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Sweet. All right, we're going to switch it just a little bit. So this would be for like a bridge loan, right? A short-term loan, a fix and flip type loan. That type of lender's got two different clients that come to them. Option A, client says, I'm going to buy a property for 1 million.
Mhm.
I'm going to put 200K into it.
Yep.
And the ARV is worth 1.5. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Option B, and we get this a lot, believe it or not, I'm going to buy the property at 1 million,
Yeah.
put no rehab into it, but it's worth 1.3 million today. So from the lender's point of view, from the underwriter's point of view, what would you view as more risky to lend out on?
That's a good question. Well, in option A, there are more things that can go wrong, right? You can have your ARV wrong. You can have your repair budget wrong. In option B, the only thing you could have wrong is the ARV. Well, I guess technically you can have the repair wrong too. Ooh, that's a good question. I actually don't know. I'm going to guess a bridge lender. Oh, shit. I'm going to go B. I'm just going to guess B. This is just a pure guess.
Yeah, and this happens a lot, and B is riskier because there's something that either the operator, the borrower, or the agent aren't telling you, right? Their deferred maintenance on it. Are you guessing what the market? And that's where, you know, from a bridge lender, if they can see what you're putting into it, because remember, all bridge, fix, and flip loans, we look at the budget. We look at what you're building, and then we compare comps based on that. We don't have anything that on option B you can do that. So
yeah, it's the reason I chose option B was really the fact, because again, I've been doing this so long, and I've seen so many investors with this scenario, but what they don't realize, and the other thing, oh, by the way, I found a property worth 1.3. I'm buying it for $1 million. I'm walking into 30% equity. And oh, by the way, Dustin, the property's been listed for 187 days. Let me promise you this one thing. Every real estate person in that market has looked at that deal a dozen times and passed. You're not lucky. You did not find a gold mine. You found a piece of shit that every other good investor passed, and you're the sucker.
I agree with that so much, because every time somebody or a client comes to us where they've got this golden unicorn that's been on market for 90 days, not like it's been off market or a friend that you developed.
Not like 7 seconds and I was first. Yeah,
exactly. I would say the exact same thing. So awesome. I think I've got technically 3 more before we wrap this up, but this is one of those, like, if you had a magic fairy dust in a perfect world and you got to control the market, hypotheticals. So if you could eliminate one risk forever being a real estate investor, would you eliminate vacancy risk or interest rate risk?
Interest rate risk.
And why?
Because vacancy risk is something you can always control. It's just a price point, right? If it's not renting at 3,200, lower to 31. Again, I invested during the worst time to be a landlord, 2006, and we gave away a free month and $99 deposits. It's always a money thing. Vacancies can be fixed. Interest rate risks are real. I mean, just look at Brandon Turner. He lost $15 million in investor capital because of interest rates. In every real estate catastrophe I have heard of, other than fraud, it's always the loan that blows up. And the loans that have short term blow up the most. So I would eliminate interest rate.
I agree, because I was looking at it or thinking about it too, in that, you know, the interest rate is going to be your debt or your payment. You can always, that's fixed. There's nothing you can do about not having to make the payment to the lender, right?
Exactly.
The rental income that you're receiving, you can always figure out a way to either cut it in 10%, 20%, you'll get something, but you won't lose or be forced to pay, you know, that higher interest rate or adjustable rate that it goes to.
Exactly.
All right. Since we started on this channel in 2021, which is why I'm bringing this up, what do you think has hurt more investors? I've got 4 here.
Okay.
High rates, insurance increases, property taxes, or bad deal?
So I think bad deals. I think most investors get hurt, especially in the beginning, because they don't have proof of concept. They don't have experience. They have bad assumptions, all of that. So I think bad deals first. I think insurance next. I think insurance in plenty parts of the state, cities gone up 200-300%. My personal portfolio has gone up 72%. From the low of 4 or 5 years ago. So insurance hosts. Property taxes hurt in a lot of the countries like Texas and whatnot. California, not so much because of Prop 13. And then I actually think high rates help investors because it eliminates competition. So I don't think high rates hurt at all. I think it helps. It helps us do better deals if you're a real investor. So I'll go deal, insurance, taxes, and then I think high rates is the help.
I love it. I mean, I was going to say deal 100% the entire time, just because when you look at where the market, you know, was in 2021, there were so many deals that penciled out just in that low rate environment where a lot of owners and operators bought it because they thought rates were going to stay there. Got adjustable rate, thought it was a short-term rental market where they wouldn't need permits or any sort of help from the city, and then boom. So that was my little, maybe it was 10 or 11 questions, but hopefully everybody got to enjoy that and see if their answers were any different than what Mike said.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below. How did you answer? Did you think I got one right, wrong?
The only one I thought I would maybe trick you on was that one one with question number 3 where it was about
Yeah.
the one that you stumped pretty quickly and said C, but other than that, you get an A plus, pass with flying.
Oh, I
Yeah, good job.
appreciate you. Dustin, you're amazing. If somebody wanted to reach out and see how Convoy can help them, what do they do?
Go to convoyhomeloans.com/ORAT, and you guys can fill out there, and it'll immediately tell us you came from ORAT, so you don't have to say it anymore.
Yeah, the fact that you guys created an ORAT tab or subsection, or what the hell you call these things on the internet, is pretty awesome. I appreciate you guys. Take care.
You got it.